I'm now recording the lecture, so that should work for the rest of the day. So we were looking at this phenomenon of early Renaissance art that developed in Florence and Siena in Italy prior to the Black Death in the early 1300s. And the two artists we looked at most in depth were Giotto in Florence, also active in Padua, which we saw in one of the online sections, and Duccio, who was active in Siena, and who was the teacher of Simone Martini, who we see on the right. In the long run, Simone Martini turns out to be a much more important artist for the development of style in Europe, all the way into the 15th century, because he moved from Siena to the city of Avignon in the mid-1430s, shortly after this was painted, 1435, 1440. And he was going there specifically to work for the papal court, because the papacy, the popes, were living in Avignon for the better part of 100 years, starting in 1309. This is because the King of France had intervened in papal politics, had the Pope driven out of Rome and installed his own Pope, the King of France did, to reciprocate the favor, so to speak. The popes moved to Avignon in France to be that much closer to the French king. And you can still go visit the palace that they built there today. Simone Martini goes there to work for not only the papacy itself, but also for the number of bankers and merchants, the art-buying public that surrounded this very wealthy court in Avignon, right? And so he takes this new realism that we were talking about, coupled with the sort of elegance, opulence, right? Fancy fabrics, refined details. Right? Please put your cell phones away. That's really one of my big, away, it means away. Right? I don't want to see it again. Time and place for everything. Opulence and elegance and refinement and luxuriousness and expensive look. That was a hallmark of what Duccio had done. Simone takes that up north and appeals to this new sector of society, which is a part of the Renaissance. There's this group of merchants who really are a new kind of buying populace, and they're people who pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, right? They made their fortune, they made their lot in life, and they want works of art that reflect, money well spent. And this Sienese style, birthed by Duccio, continued by Simone Martini, very much appealed to them, right? Once it winds up in France, it spreads from there to all of Northern Europe. As kings come to visit the palace of the popes in Avignon, they see this new art that's being made, and they think, oh, that's pretty stiff. I want one of those for my own. And we immediately begin to see works of art that are similar to Simone Martini, similar eventually to Duccio, being produced everywhere. Czechoslovakia, Germany, throughout France, England, the Low Countries, Holland and Belgium, right? Everywhere we look, we see this style spreading. Bright colors, refined, dainty figures, opulent fabrics, right? Everywhere we look. And for this reason, we call it the International Gothic style, right? So, I think we're just getting here at the end of class a week ago, where we see the exact same subject matter in a much smaller panel. This is a private panel. This is not a Simone's work, remember, is one of the altars in Siena Cathedral. It's so big, right? It's going to be like 8 feet across. So it's meant to be seen sitting in the church, and it's far away from you, right? In the same way, I guess, that my screen is big here, so the idea is that it's hidden in the back, you can still see it. The work on the left, however, is very, very small. It's not like this, right? Maybe a foot tall. And that's because its viewing was personal. It was part of a folding altarpiece. There were 4 panels painted on 2 sides each that hinged together and sort of stacked up, right? And could be put into a pouch and carried with you from place to place for very private engagement, for very private viewing, for private devotion. It's since been split up. 2 of the panels are in a museum in Antwerp, Belgium. 2 of them are just up 95 in Baltimore at the Walters Art Museum, which is what WHAM stands for, right? Not some George Michael foundation, okay? So same thing we see in Simone Martini. You'll notice certain similarities. Angel coming in from the left again, I mentioned that is 9 times out of 10, if not 99 times out of 100. Kneeling to the Virgin Mary, that also becomes increasingly more common after the middle of the 14th century. Simone Martini is one of the first to do it. It became popular because a religious tract, not the Bible, but a book that everybody read, mentioned, as they filled in the details of the story, that the angel knelt out of honor to the Virgin Mary. And artists began to pick it up. So the angel comes in and kneels before the Virgin. She sits on the right, on a very elaborate throne, with opulent fabric draped behind her. Notice the color scheme is similar. Colors equally super saturated and rich. Right? She's been reading in each of them. Right? And the angel appears to her and speaks the words, and we can hear it in a way by reading it. On Simone Martini's, the letters are upraised on the background, but the same words that the angel here holds in a banner. Right? Ave gratias plena, Dominus tecum. Behold, full of grace, God is with you. Right? So it's a speaking altarpiece. We're meant to read these words and understand the story straight out of the Bible. In this case, you can see quite clearly, I might have a detail coming up, that we can read the words in the Virgin's book. And those words are the words that she speaks back to the angel, interestingly enough. Even though the book is supposed to be the Bible, it contains her words in response. Behold the handmaiden of God. Ecce ancilla Domini. Ecce, behold, ancilla, ancillary, servant, Domini, God. Right? So certain similarities between the two. Color is significantly more rich here, partly because it's been a lot of its life folded up. It wasn't exposed to sunlight. The paint is bright and crisp as the day it was painted. Whereas Simone's is darkened through time, which happens from exposure to light. Right? But you must imagine originally that the color of the Virgin's robe on the right was every bit as luxurious as in our anonymous work from probably original these days Belgium that we see on the left. In each of them, we see sort of the dove of the Holy Spirit coming down toward the Virgin Mary. In Simone's work, it's in the center top. Right? There's the dove surrounded by angels. Here it's isolated against the background, and up in the upper left corner is God the Father. Right? Directing this. The Son of God is going to be born in the Virgin Mary. And you'll notice his book is open, and we read it as well. And it basically says Alpha and Omega in abbreviation. Al, S, right? Alpha, S, O. Right? So you read down the left page and then down the right. Alpha, S, O. Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. Which is again a biblical reference to Christ. Right? So he is directing this action. And you can see that the background, all that gold has been the surface underneath the gold has been treated so that it's patterned everywhere you look. Again, that's a luxuriousness. That's a hallmark of the International Gothic style. These are a little on the hot side. It's very hard to photograph things against gold. But there we can see the angels script a bit better, the words in the book as well. There, the Virgin Mary and that luxurious orange fabric behind her as the dove comes down to her forehead. Her attitude is a bit more accepting, a little bit less doubtful than we saw in Simone Martini's works. Again, they tell us, various devotional manuals from the Renaissance will tell us that the Virgin went through a series of reactions. This was making her more human, right? Went through a series of reactions on hearing this astounding message, and eventually came to accept it. And this seems much more accepting, which is also highlighted by the words in the book. I'm but a servant. Behold, this is the handmaiden of God, right? There's a final acceptance of the job at hand. Right? I wanted to show the detail of that throne that she's sitting in, which looks really quite architectural, doesn't it? We have all the turrets on the outside. We have a ceiling above it that we can see moves in a sort of barrel vault over the top. And all of these stone and wooden inlays that make it look very much like a church that's surrounding her. But that same interest in a rather elaborate throne for the Virgin Mary we've seen in quite a few works going back to Giotto and Duccio's time. Another panel from the Antwerp-Baltimore portable altarpiece, right, is this image of the crucifixion. This is the moment when Christ is hanging on the cross, usually depicted just before he died. And we see the Virgin Mary appearing a second time, and you'll notice that she turns away from the cross because she's sad. But at the same time, she begins to almost parallel the upper body pose that she had in the Annunciation, doesn't she? Right? See, her body just sways to the left, and even though her hands are in a different position, the face is almost in the exact same spot in each of the two. So she turns away. The other figure standing there is St. John, not to be confused with John the Baptist. He's dead by now, right? That is St. John the Evangelist, the one who wrote the Gospel according to St. John, and he's almost always there at the foot of the cross. Again, God appears up above with a book in his hand, and we have numerous texts that we can read as well. Stylistically, the same bright colors, elegant figures. Look at the sway of the Virgin Mary. It's almost like a crescent moon, isn't she? You know? Or John, that sort of elegant, the way his hip is sort of shot out to the side. And that's my undergraduate advisor, one of my Leonard Kimball, just a couple years ago. He was kind of had this really dry sense of humor, right? And he's always told me stories about like insomnia and artistic stuff. And he always taught at like 1 in the afternoon, boring as all get out in the way. He's just monotone. But he had a great line about that pose, which is sort of like that. You take these poses, you begin to feel sort of like that. He calls it the debutante slouch. And I thought that was just perfect, right? It's sort of like, and that's what even John's got it, right? And it's that part of that elegance that fits with the bright colors and opulent fabrics and the beautifully cool gold background. That gives us that sense of being, you know, classy, rich, if you will. It's very manly in its way. But John's got that, doesn't he? That sort of F-shaped way. That's a pose, you know, I mean, I'm getting older now, and my hips aren't what they once were, but it's kind of hard to hold. But it is very sort of, you know, it's runway, right? Voguing, if you will. And even the Virgin Mary, with her sort of gentle crescent shape, is very much in the same kind of position. I've got some nice details of this, and you can begin to see some of the things that are going on with the background, how it's all been worked with various tools so that it's not just a flat gold, but you begin to see patterns everywhere. And you'll notice that there are these angels that appear, 4 of them, right? And what are they doing there? Look at the foot of the cross. There's a little angel there. What's that angel up to? It's a good call, but not quite. Like you're trying to take the nails out. Now, we wait for humans to do that, usually, in pictures at least, right? There's usually a guy sometimes who'll appear with pincers to take them out. But you'll see there's one down there. There's another one up here by his side, and notice where each one of them are. There's 3 of them are by the nails, right? But the 4th one isn't. What are they doing? They're collecting the blood of Christ, right? Each one of them has a goblet. Can you see it now? Now that I've said that, each one of them has a goblet. So just there, that angel, you can see it's gold on gold, so it makes it a little bit difficult. But the angels gathering the blood as it spills out of the side of Christ into a golden goblet, and that's true down below. As the blood, and again, that realism, the blood drips off his toes, falls down in, and the angel's there to grab it. Now, why do you suppose that is? What kind of a symbolism might that have? Not the detail we read about in the Bible. The angel's there to gather the blood. What's the point? Why did the artist include them? His blood is divine. There's exactly right. There are numerous, that's part of the multiple answers, right? That's a very good one. His blood is divine. There are many places in Europe where you can go and find a relic. You know the word relics? Right? When you think about it, old people are relics, right? It's a disparaging term we use. But a relic is a religious object. More often than not, it's a body part of a saint. Sometimes it's an article of clothing or some hair, right? But more often than not, it's a body part. And there are numerous churches in Europe that claim to have a relic of the blood of Christ, the holy blood of Christ, right? I saw one in Bruges when I was there. In fact, they have an annual parade where they walk it around the city. They've been doing it ever since the 12th century, right, with that relic that they have of the blood of Christ. I was doing some research for my upper division class on Venetian Renaissance art, and there's a church in Padua, right, where Giotto was working, that had the holy blood, another part of the holy blood of Christ there. So it certainly gives credence to the idea that there might be relics out there of this blood, right? Which otherwise would just spilled in the dirt, and how do you get it to be pure blood then, right? Somebody gathered it. So that's certainly the holy blood of Christ, and the importance of that is true. But there's another symbolic element for someone who is looking at this object with devotion in mind, and that is the idea that the cup full of blood is for Catholics before Protestantism here, right? Martin Luther's not until 1517, so we're way ahead of that. So for Catholics, a cup full of blood is a reference to the communion, right? One of the sacraments of the church, where you go to church and the priest blesses wine in remembrance of the Last Supper, where Christ says, take this wine, and he says, this is my blood, which is given for you. Take this bread, this is my body, which is broken for you. Right? So the idea of the angels gathering Christ's blood in a little goblet makes this reference to the communion, to one of the primary sacraments that Christians participate in. Right? So that's what they're doing, right? They're gathering the blood of Christ. Again, a couple of it's a little blurry, this one. Where you can see the chalice a bit better here. I do kind of like the way the angel comes in on this sort of rocket, a jet stream behind the angel as it comes shooting in from outside. Another one up in the upper left corner. Again, it's got so blurry with this photo that you can't see it entirely well. Right? Up above, God the Father says, Ego sum via e veritas. I am the way, the truth, and the light. Right? Again, the text helps us to read. And then Christ is speaking as well. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? These are his last words before he dies. Right? A little moment of doubt, if you will. Not thinking that, he's thinking he's been forsaken when in fact he hasn't. Notice he looks this way, Christ does. So he doesn't see God up there. Right? So he doesn't realize that God has not forsaken him. On the cross is a tablet, I-N-R-I. The lines above each of the letters is an abbreviation. Right? And it's Latin for Christ. Jesu Nazareti Rex Iudi. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Right? I-N-R-I. So that would have been put up there by the centurions who tortured Christ. before killing it, right? So lots of things for us to read, because remember that our, and again, it's about this big, right? It's not even bigger, it's about more like about that, actually. But our viewing context is one of intimacy. So these small texts are things that we are intended to read. You had your hand up in the back. The first part that I said, about which part of it? Up above, ego sum via a veritas. I am the way and the truth. Right? Via the way, veritas, right? Truth. Ego sum, I am. I am the way and the truth. So, again, referencing words specifically from the Bible that we have here. Right? Now, these are painted on the back. We don't have really time to get into that. We don't have time to look at the other two scenes that are in a museum in Antwerp. Suffice to say that these all brought together different scenes from the Bible for someone to carry around. We think it might have been the younger brother of the French king, the Duke of Burgundy. Is altogether likely, although we don't have a smoking gun. We're not 100% sure. As we look at this work, which came from Cologne in Germany, rather than the Low Countries, you can see this international Gothic style, right? And it really stays the same from country to country to country. It was born in Siena, but transfers its way north. Again, sort of dainty, elegant figures, bright, sharp colors, a tooled gold background. Part of the elegance of the figures is achieved by elongating them. You'll notice how stretched Christ's body is in each of these. And you'll also notice that they share quite a few iconographic details. In other words, elements of subject matter repeat from panel to panel. Right? We've got the angels gathering the blood. We've got the Virgin Mary on the left and John on the right. St. John on the right. The Virgin Mary weeping in each of them. You'll notice that in the Walter's work on the right, she's using part of the liner of her garment to wipe her tears from her eyes. That realism that we've seen. In the one on the left, from the National Gallery, she's got a handkerchief in her hand as she's about to wash her tears. It almost looks like she's crying blood. I think that it's just worn off. The way you hold gilding down is there's a layer of red clay underneath it, and sometimes when the paint is where you get that red coming through. Right. So we have things that are very, very similar in the two of them. Here's a nice detail of the Virgin's tears and her, again, the tooling on her halo with, in fact, words on it. The angel gathering the blood with a chalice. We've got, again, 4 of them, with the 5th one who's just worshiping Christ to sort of balance out the composition. We have, in addition to the people who belong there, the Virgin Mary and St. John, we have these 2 other figures as well, who are probably the people who paid for it. The patrons, or the donors, we sometimes call them, because sometimes these works are given as gifts to a local church. They don't belong there, you know, they're not, they're in the scene, but they weren't there originally. But through their devotional practice and through their good works for the church, they get included within the scene. It's almost as if the panel manifests what they hope to happen. As you pray and pray hard, you become more sympathetic to the scene, more empathetic to the scene. You become part of it. And here they definitely have. We have a very wealthy man on the left and what appears to be a Carthusian monk on the right. The Carthusians wore white. But definitely he's a monk because of his hairdo. You know, I can't help having no hair on the top of my head. It just happens. Right? But monks can shave the top of their head, called a tonsure. Right? And so that little ring of hair that he has around the outside signifies that he's a monk. And the white will suggest the particular order that he's from. Again, nice details. Notice the I'm sorry, did I say St. Longinus? I was so wrong about that. The monk is the only real patron here. The figure on the left, you'll notice, has a long spear in his hands, and it goes all the way up to the angel who's catching the blood of Christ there. This is, according to legend, the centurion who pierced Christ's side. Now, when Christ was hanging on the cross, right, one of the things that they did was, they're going to check and make sure he's dying in here, and they're going to do some more torture as well. And one of the centurions poked his side with the lance, and from his side came a spray of blood and some water. Now, through the Middle Ages, first he got a name. He didn't have a name, Longinus. And secondly, his legend sort of grew. And I'm not going to handle it in just a second, okay? His legend sort of grew. Longinus was, according to the longer legend, blind when he did this. Right? When he actually pierced Christ's side with the spear. And again, none of this is found in the Bible, but it's one of those things that by the 15th century, by the early 1400s, everybody was sort of aware of this. Right? This legend. He was supposedly blind. And if you look at his face, he's kind of looking a little sightless, isn't he? Like an attempt to make him look like he's staring sort of vacantly. But the legend went on that when Christ's holy blood, which you mentioned before, right, dripped down his lance after he pierced the side, he got him in his hands and he wiped his face and he could miraculously see. A miracle works in the blood of Christ. So you'll notice, if you look up here, that alongside the lance is some blood dripping down toward his face. This is indicative of the coming miracle, where this sightless fellow, those aren't really sightless eyes, will soon be able to miraculously see. Well, he's only 33. I don't know if that's young to me. We're on different sides of 33. He looks younger here, but that's part of it is just, the variances of style from artist to artist. There's not a whole lot of range in Christ on the cross. You're never going to see a baby Christ on the cross. I'll take that. You're going to see some things that are kind of goofy later on. Oh, he's got a beard here, too. I got a detail. I can't remember if I got a detail coming up. Let's hold that thought, right? So there's our Carthusian monk on the right, in case you don't know how to spell Carthusian. And I don't have a detailed Christ face, but he is definitely wearing a beard. So when you go and look online at the PowerPoint that's up there, or even find the recording of that, right, you'll see that this is in fact not just the shadow of his chin, but a beard, and there's some hair coming out here. The artist has also gone to some detail to make the crown of thorns on his head produce blood, and there's quite a bit of blood sort of in here as well. Right? And again, remember that the viewing context of this is so different from what you're getting here in class, right? You're sitting 25 feet away from the picture that's digital, and it's projected on the screen, and he would have been looking at it like this. Right? This is about the yay. So this is a much smaller work, and then sort of spend some time taking off your reading glasses and getting into it, right? And all of those details will become much more apparent. So he's definitely bearded. However, your question is a good one in that Christ is not always bearded. By this time he is, right? I rarely see a bearded Christ in my life. However, in early Christian art, the first century, right? So Christ is 0, right? AD. And you don't start to see images of Christ until 300 AD or so, 300 years later, 250 or so, you start to see images of Christ. And, then the way in which they look starts to begin to look the same all the time, coming centuries. And so it's really not until around the 9th century that the standard themes that we see, and there's that text that I told you about, we have a light Christ that starts to really be set. That Christ is going to look a particular way. And this is where, he stops looking like he's from Palestine. He starts looking more like he's from Europe, right? European dark hair rather than Semitic dark hair, right? But there was a moment, more of a moment, centuries, where he was beardless. And part of it is that the earliest images of Christ were based on images of the Roman Emperor. The Roman Emperor claimed to be God on earth as well. Claimed to go back to heaven after he died. This is a nice parallel, right? They co-opted that early Christian artist and making it right? Over and above that, when the emperor claimed to be a presence in the forum, in the basilica, which was really a Roman word, claimed to be a presence there through his image. Which is also something that they Christians do. So early on his beard, and he slowly but surely develops a beard. And part of it has to do with the idea of emphasizing Christianity. Right? That the beardlessness was a sign that, I don't shave over the weekend, I come back with stuff. You've got stuff. You've got 4 days stuff. Or trim to look at. Okay? But that's really happens, right? It just happens. Now, beardlessness would require something else, right? And so beardlessness is seen as a symbol of holiness rather than humanity. Okay? Now, Christ is fully human, but he's also holy. And so sometimes you even see him in picture cycles where he's holy. He's performing miracles, he's got no beard. He's suffering, he's got a beard. Right? At this point, he's got a beard. Okay? So there's that long answer to a short question. It's like, hey, the short answer is, he doesn't. The long answer is, there's a business. And it's kind of a fascinating thing how it came to be, where Christ finally became the bearded Christ that we're still used to seeing today. Right? Okay, so we're looking at this international Gothic style, right? That's spread through Europe because of Simone Martini, right? Simone Martini having made his way from Siena to Avignon, and from there the style spreads to other patrons who copy it, right? Who pick it up because of the sumptuousness, the elegance, the richness of it all, right? Really becomes very, very appealing. This international Gothic style is not only outside Italy, right? We talked about Simone Martini moving to Avignon, spreading from there to Czechoslovakia, Germany, England, Low Countries. It also stays put in Italy, too, right? That's part of its internationalness, and continues into the 15th century in Italy. So here's Gentile da Fabriano, works in the city of Florence. We've jumped ahead quite a bit from our earliest Italian works, right? We're almost 100 years after Simone Martini. But we still see the international Gothic style. An interest in rich, sumptuous colors. An interest in luxurious, patterned fabric. Okay. Look at the Madonna's sleeve, right? All textured gold and bright blues and reds, right? Everywhere we look, it's utterly sumptuous, right? Even the stool that she's seated on, no longer that sort of fancy architectural throne, but we do see that it's been draped with a very beautiful piece of fabric covered with patterns of flowers, right? And this continues across the floor under her feet. So, very, very much international Gothic style. Also, the humanity of the piece, you'll notice that, like what we saw beginning with Giotto, there's a human interaction between the characters. Look at that wonderful little exchange in the faces between the Virgin Mary and Christ, her son. As he looks deeply into her eyes, as she not only supports him on her lap, and he's kind of fidgety, right? It's like he's running around kind of on her lap, and she's sort of supporting him there. She's got one hand on his chest so he doesn't tip over as he tries to stand up on her knee. And capturing that moment that, on one hand, holy is the Virgin and Temple. On the other hand, it's natural, it's human, it's a mother, right, with her baby. This is a bit overexposed, but I wanted to show you again the interesting chiaroscuro, right, that modeling in light and dark that we saw. It also begins to show you some more of the detail of the carpet, for lack of a better word, that's been draped over the stool. And what's in focus here is you'll notice that the detail to the hem of the robe, where we can read words patterned into the gold hem that runs across the bottom here. And guess what these words are? Ave Maria, go over a little bit, gratia plena, Domine tecum. Behold Mary, full of the grace of God. This is the words from the angel to the Virgin Mary. So the inscription that we see here reminds us of the Annunciation. Reminds us of the moment when the angel appeared to Mary and told her that she would bear Christ who's now playing on her lap. Right? We are meant, as viewers of this, to read it. And this is a fairly large panel. It's meant to be seen in a church. It's about 2.5, 3 feet tall, right? As opposed to some of the other pieces that we've seen. And if we look more closely at some of the inscriptions on the hem, we see that there are other places where there is an inscription here. This is a much better photo, where you can see the tooling to the background that much more fully. But you'll notice that Christ reaches up and he's about to touch Mom's clothing. Right? He's reaching toward her breasts, which is nurturing, right? And what does it say there? Mater. What does that mean? Exactly, mother, right? Mater. So he's touching the word mother. So this adds to what's already there with the humanism. He's responding to his mother. And he's thinking about her as his mother as he reaches out to touch this. And again, this is a pretty cute baby Jesus, right? I mean, sometimes our baby Jesus is like little men, right? Tiny little men. But this doesn't. This is a pretty good baby Christ. And again, there's that exchange through the gaze between the two of them as they interact. In his other hand, interestingly enough, he has a butterfly. Can you see that now? Right? Trailing from his hand. And it's a tiny little thread. It's like a pet butterfly. There's nowhere in the Bible that talks about this. You can see the edge of the thread here coming out of his fingers. He's carrying a butterfly with him. This is, again, a symbolic element. When we look at Giotto, we talked about the fact that she's got that rose, right, with the thorns, and Christ is reaching for it, and thorns are a symbol of sin, and she's kind of keeping him away from that, right, protecting him. Well, in this case, there is a butterfly here, also for symbolic reasons. The stuff that the artist includes are included for a reason. And a butterfly was seen as the symbol of Christ. You can find numerous writings, Renaissance and earlier, that talk about the butterflies being the perfect analogy for Christ. Because what a butterfly does, right, is it starts off as a caterpillar, humble, earthbed, right? Goes into the cocoon and comes out something else. No longer earthbed, but able to fly. Right? You see where Christian theologians can say, oh, that's Jesus in a nutshell, right? He walks the earth. He's human. He goes into the tomb, and he's resurrected and comes out heavenly. Right? It was an analogy for Christ. So here, even at his infancy, we've got this symbol of what's going to happen for the rest of his life. Right? He's going to be human. You see him human. He's going to live his life as a human, die as a human, come out flying, right? Come out no longer earthbound. Come out a deity. And that's a harbinger of what's to come for the life of Christ. Our last international Gothic style work will turn back to the textbook for another work by the same artist, Antonio da Fabriano, working in Florence around 1420. This is a massive, massive painting. A good, is that the detail? Yeah. Almost 10 feet tall. Right? 10 by 9. And it was an altarpiece commissioned by a member of the Strozzi family, thus known as the Strozzi altarpiece, for his private chapel. By private, I mean he owned it, but it was open to other people, in Florence. And it shows another scene from the life of Christ, whereas the work on the right from the National Gallery is just an isolated picture of the Virgin and Child. There's no story there. Here we see the story of the three magi, the three wise men, right, who have worked their way through the landscape and have come to worship Christ after following the star. Right? And so we see in the lower left corner the Virgin Mary, Joseph standing directly behind her. There are those two midwives again that we saw in Giotto's work, behind the Virgin's shoulder, and the baby Jesus who reaches out to touch the bald head of the oldest of the three magi. Right? The magi then work their way back to the right. We can pick them out from the rest of the group because they're so beautifully dressed. There's that sumptuous international style fabric, right, with the three magi. So red stockings, the guy that's kneeling, and the guy that's all the way down on the ground, right? And the other people are simply their retinue, right? The group that accompanies them, their servants. And you can even start to see great little details like the guy in blue that's taking the spurs off of Mr. Redstockings. Okay? Their hunting dogs, their horses, the grooms that hold their horses. Right? This is that realistic detail. These are kings coming to visit. They wouldn't just show up all by themselves. We know what kings travel like. Right? This is what it is. Beautiful retinue, a beautiful group of people, right, coming to see Christ. Here it is a bit bigger. Oh, by the way, there's a predella down below, which we're not really going to talk about. Right, but we've seen predellas before. Let's extend the central scene. Okay, let's look a little bit more closely here now at the main scene, which we've already begun to talk about. Directly behind the Virgin and Joseph is an ox and an ass. We saw that with Duccio's work as well. They're almost always there. We talked about that, right? You have to remind me because I'm not going off the nose if I said this. We talked about the symbolism of the donkey and the cow, right? The ox obeys its master. That's a good Christian. The donkey kicks against the goads, is always stubborn and belligerent, and that's the Jews, right? Very anti-Semitic, right? Well, there they are again at the manger. The idea that they are at the manger, right? This is a manger. Manger means to eat, right? Relates to the idea that Christ's body is what Christians symbolically eat at the communion. And you'll notice that our head, Magus, actually takes the foot of Christ right to his mouth and kisses it. Now, he's not eating him, so cannibalism here, right? It's not a zombie film. But it does reference the idea that when we come to the altar, we too will take the body of Christ to our mouth in a very different way. So here's a nice detail of that lead Magus being blessed by Christ. Again, the realism coupled with this opulence, right? Look at those fabrics, right? Now, the patterns of the fabrics don't seem to follow the three-dimensional shape of the figures. They seem sort of just on the surface, as if they're adding luxury to the painting as a painting. But each one of them, an amalgam of gold leaf and beautiful sumptuous fabrics. Right? This is the legacy of Duccio. This is the legacy of Simone Martini, more than 100 years later. The Bible doesn't tell us how many wise men there were. However, again, through the years, kind of like with the beard thing, right, the number kind of got settled down to 3. And for artists, since the wise men are meant to represent Christ's first appearance to humanity, actually it's the second, the shepherds are the first, right? The poor get to go there first. That's good. But the Magi came to represent all of the world. And so when we look at them, we almost always see the Magi as one very old, one middle-aged, and one young. The 3 ages of man, right? Humankind. Eventually, we'll start to see them also represent different parts of the world. So one will be European, one will be Islamic, and one will be African. Right? One from the Near East. Right? The known world to them. We're not quite there yet, but there is a sense with their hairdos, like one in the middle, for example, that they're trying to show him as being an exotic other, someone who isn't a European per se. Right? They've come from a long way off. Is that on the hall or in here? If it's yours, make sure it's okay. Could you pop back there and just shut the door? That'll make our lives a little simpler. Thank you very much. Right? Again, look at the realism of the piece as we sift through these details, and you'll notice this whole range of the crowd that's there, looking in different directions and interacting with each other. There are numerous legends that grew up about the Magi, and there's some really wonderful details in this. You'll notice, for example, the fighting bird. Right? A bird of prey attacking a more innocent-looking bird here. We certainly see this in other details of this particular piece that there's the idea that this offset Christ. Christ is the Prince of Peace. He's come to bring peace to the world. How do you show that in pain? Part of the way to show that is to show that there isn't peace in the world. That there is something that he's come here to fix. Right? So on one hand, we've got these birds. I love that they're sort of looking at it. Even though the foreshortening is tough, if you've ever taken a driving class, foreshortening is tough. But it's not easy for Renaissance artists either. They're watching it. The other thing that we see is the horses don't seem to be getting on all that well either. Right? Again, the idea that Christ has come to cure peace. And again, we go outside the Bible and find these other religious sources that paint this mood, right? And in one of them, it talks about the fact that the three Magi, when they first met each other, coming from different areas, their first reaction to each other was to fight. And then, the miracle of the birth of Christ, the star that they had witnessed, revealed to them that they're supposed to work together, to travel to see the Prince of Peace. And they get on. Right, pretty early on, they start to cooperate. But the horses, being animals, being dumb, right, don't get it and still are kind of at it. Right? Notice the other elements that add to this idea of them coming from an exotic far-off place. The cheetahs, aren't those great? I remember I looked at this, I thought this for years before I thought the cheetahs. It's probably because I really crafted pictures back then. Right? High res has changed our lives, but there's a great cheetah here that looks like it's probably part of the reason that horse is so happy. Right? But there's another one then up here as well. And it looks as if it's got something on, like it's a pet cheetah that's come along with them, right? But again, this is a symbol that they've come from far off places to visit Christ. More birds flitting around, monkeys as well amongst the entourage. Back in the background, we see the Magi appear a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. Just like with Duccio, where we saw Christ twice, right? Once with the Virgin Mary and once with the midwife. Here we see the three Magi, we can identify them by this, multiple times. They've all three got halos, and they love to travel in threes. So there they are, all three of them, barely make contact. Right? They're there, they're here. This is where they first see the star. Right? So they appear four different times in this image as they work their way through the landscape and the viewer do the same visually, and eventually now arrive here with the star directly above Joseph's head that they've been following all the way. And here's a detail of the back left, where this is the Magi here on top of the hill. This is where they first see the star. They're going to jump in boats and work their way around. But you'll also notice that there are scenes of crime. Look in the lower right corner there. And you see a man being mugged. This is again the idea that the world is rife with problems that Christ is coming to save. Right? And the image for the Magi emphasize that. I'm not really following notes on the set myself, but there's our two midwives again. They're receiving the gifts from the Magi as they give them to us. What they're looking at, is this gold, frankincense, or myrrh? And they're like, what's inside of here? Right? And again, these natural, realistic details that help to fulfill this new desire for realism. Right? So, this Brocchi Altarpiece presents to us the longevity of the International Gothic style. This is the legacy of that opening of the Renaissance, that very beginning of the Renaissance that we saw with Giotto and Duccio. Spreads throughout all of Europe, but also continues to remain strong in the early 15th century in Italy as well, here in Florence. While this is taking place, in the early 15th century, we start to see something else happen alongside this. Slowly but surely will replace the International Gothic style. And that is a sort of a second phase of the Renaissance. So let's take a look at this. This is a sculpture now, the relief sculpture. You know what the word relief sculpture means? It's not sculpted in full three dimensions. You can't walk around the back of it like a statue, right? It is in relief. So it raises up from the flat surface, but is not fully in three dimensions. And it shows the moment when Abraham has been commanded to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, as a test, a proof of his faithfulness to the Word of God. Right? He hears from God, you must do this. And at the very last moment, an angel stops him. Right? A messenger from heaven comes down and says, you don't have to do this. You have proven your faith. You are Father Abraham. You're good to go. Right? And so that's what Lorenzo di Berti is depicting here in this gilded bronze panel. So I want to first talk about style, and then we'll talk about technique and whatnot. Right? There's some elements of the International Gothic style here, still. And it translates into sculpture as well. You'll notice, for example, in Dante da Fabriano's work on Mosaic, how the landscape tips up and fills pretty much the entire picture, right? So we don't see a landscape flat here and a lot of sky behind it. The sky is relegated to like 1/10 of the picture, right? The landscape tips up, so we sort of look at the side of the figures in the foreground, and then we sort of look down on the figures in the background. Right? It's not very accurate. And as we work our way back into the landscape, you'll notice that the mountains all have this sort of cutaway form. You can see. Again, that same cross we're talking about here. There's some teeth cut out. I kind of like that. It's like a big wedge of carbon on it, right? The teeth cut. And you can have the same thing here. How the landscape tips up and fills a lot of the space. Right? That's coming from the International Gothic style. The debutante flowers. Look at the body of Abraham, Father Abraham. Look how far out. I can't even do that anymore. It's gold anymore. But look how far out that hits them. How elegant and posed that is. His feet sort of, come to point toward your right. Body then sweeps way out, and his head comes back on the left. So you're down here, very much the same with these wonderful sweeping rows, the detail to the hem down below. Again, it's the sort of the sculpted version of the kind of elegance that we see in the painting. And again, these very elegant poses that we see. We still have some International Gothic style elements, right? But there's, alongside that, something new going on here. There's Abraham bigger, and you can see again that the sort of amazing detail to some of the brocading on his robe across the chest plate, along the ends, everywhere you look. This is cast bronze, right? That's been covered with gold. So very much like international Gothic work and Sacramento covered with gold, now the actual robes are covered with gold. But it's in cast bronze. Did you know how you make a cast bronze sculpture? You don't go out and carve a piece of bronze. Yeah. You have to create a mold. Exactly right. You create a mold that has a hollow bit that you pour the hot bronze into, right? Molten bronze into the mold. The question is, how do you create that mold? Because you got to have the mold, and you have to have the outside, and you have the inside, right? This is a rudimentary drawing of a mold, right? And you would then pour your hot into there, right? There's your coffee. Right? So you pour it into the mold, and this would then fill up with bronze. But you don't want to make it solid because that's you're wasting bronze. So what you have inside of here is a second core. So that the part that you filled with bronze is just a bit around here. And there'd be a bunch of pegs in there, and there would hold the center where it belongs, and you got it out. Right? Got the idea? For molten bronze. The question is, how do you make a mold? So if you make marble is a possibility, you need another material to keep it, right? You make it out of something else. And marble would be a little bit too difficult, partly because marble itself is pretty expensive. And so that's what doesn't work out. Over here, your head. Wax or clay were the things about these. And what you do is you build up this, right, the core in the middle. So you build up your core here, and you cover it with a very, very thin layer of something soft, right? And then you would carve that, right? So you make the middle part out of like armature and plaster, right? And metal rods, and you get to see where you put it, right? And then you would cover it with this very, very thin, as you possibly could, right? Layer of something thin, usually wax, but also we find sometimes it's clay. Okay? That then you finish to look like what you got here. Right? You then cast that on the outside of the plaster, that gives you the box around the outside, and if it's wax, all you have to do is heat the thing up. And the wax is this thing. Right? Because wax is mold, right? And it's really good. So it's often called the lost wax technique, right? Of bronze. Now, if it's clay, you put the hot clay out there, come in and just wash it off, right? Scrape it away, don't baby the clay. Fire, right? So this is how we get to this bronze casting, is that you've got a core on the background that's been covered with a thin layer of softer material that is then shaped into the different shapes that you see here, cast it, which means it could be multiple, but this was the one-off, right? And then you would have to finish it, right? You would treat the bronze with different chemicals so it turns green as opposed to silver. You would then come back and plate it with gold. But you would also have to what they call chase it, which means to smooth out the rust bit as well. There's quite a bit of work in that. Right? This is the technique to come to this release. Yes, okay.
Well, when the wax melt, like when you put like super hot bronze on it?
It would, but the problem is that if it falls out in the bronze, we want the bronze to be a single piece of bronze, right? And so bronze cutting is actually really difficult because if you're pouring it and you just stop for a second and start pouring it, that cooling that happens to the bronze will mean that the stuff is already in there and this won't adhere to each other. So if you let the wax in there and just pour the bronze on top of it, you don't see yourself all those right, of pockets and stuff, right? And so they would always get rid of the bronze first, and then would open it up and then make sure it was all out of there, right? Before they would then fit it back together and pour the bronze. And this is a technique they've been doing back to the ancient Greeks and beyond, right? Going back to the 5th century BC. This is the way that they made so famous Greek bronze statues were made with exactly the same, even if they're it's pretty fascinating. It's a lost wax technique, okay? So you have to imagine then that with Abraham here, all of this was carved originally in wax on that other core. The wax then disappears, lost, and it's been cast. It's obviously highly technical and highly proficient in that you've got those knives coming out of 3 dimensions, right? How do you do that as a bronze cast? And this is where Ghiberti was really, really good at this, right? Sometimes you would cast things like that arm separately and then weld it on afterwards, right? But Ghiberti did this all one piece, right? So it's really sort of a phenomenal piece of technique. Okay. Now we talked about the scene. Abraham goes up to the top of the mountain with his son, who has no idea what he's about to do, and he's going to slit his throat because God has commanded him to do, and he doesn't doubt God at all. And the Bible tells us that he went with 2 servants, and so they appear over here on the left, and they're sort of talking about what's going on. On either side of that donkey, who's grazing as time goes on. And then the angel at the very last minute, a messenger from heaven, tells Abraham, hey, stop. You've proven yourself. And if you look over there in the bushes, in the thicket, you'll find that there's a ram there. Use that for your sacrifice instead. So the story is the moment before Abraham is halted. And he's intent on Isaac. Doesn't yet see the angel, even though you do. And certainly doesn't see the ram on the top of the hill behind his elbow, waiting for its sacrifice. Right? It's a highly dramatic moment here. And you'll notice that the look on Isaac's face is one of pure trust in his father. It's like little baby Jesus looking at the Madonna in the painting we just saw from the National Gallery. There's an exchange between them. And even Abraham's face is one of, let's go back, right? He's determined, but he's not angry about this. He's not punishing his son. He has to do this. And I think the grief that it's causing him, we can see in his face. There's Isaac as he looks back toward his father, and you'll see now a detail that you might have missed is the father's fingers coming around the shoulder of Isaac as he tenderly holds him and is about now to plunge the knife in. This is where things start to change for us, is with the body of Isaac. Even though quite a bit of the sculpture is still International Gothic in style, that body of Isaac is really an amazing thing. For a young kid, when he's supposed to be 12 or 13, he's pretty darn funky, right? Pretty built for a child of that age. And you'll notice that muscles are very, very well developed everywhere we look, and he's not necessarily in the debutante slouch anymore. He is, in fact, resting most of his weight on his proper right leg. And then his left knee comes forward a bit, as if it's not really bearing as much weight. And then the body sort of gently twists and turns in space. And in fact, that pose that we're seeing here is one that comes directly out of Ghiberti's own study of ancient Greek and Roman statues. And this brings us fully into this second phase of the Renaissance. We talked about the Renaissance as having multiple phases, and early on when we looked at Giotto and Duccio, the Renaissance was really a revival of realism. And that's kind of where it started then, the revival of realism. Right? That they got from looking at old Roman art. The second phase in the 15th century, we start to see them importing Greek Roman body types into their Christian images. The religious scene has really nothing to do with ancient Rome, but Ghiberti has turned the body of Isaac into a revival of the perfect body type that we see everywhere in ancient Roman and ancient Greek art. This torso from the 4th century BC is up in the Walters Museum in Baltimore, right? And you can see the degree to which, even though that was originally a fully standing sculpture, how the body and the handling of the muscles through the torso, that sort of gentle bend to the musculature, and even the sense of the weight shift, where the right leg is bearing the weight, the left leg is relaxed, how that has been brought into the Isaac. So many people point to this work by Ghiberti as a really important milestone in the Renaissance, because what it ends up doing is heralding something we're going to see quite a bit from this point forward. More than just realism, which was the first phase. Here in the 15th century, we start to see quotes from ancient art transplanted into Christian imagery, into new imagery. The second phase of that rebirth, right? Now, in our last 5 minutes, a little bit of background. Lorenzo Ghiberti's panel, right, this relief panel, was commissioned by the supervisors of the cathedral in Florence. Here's the cathedral. Okay. The cathedral is relatively new, right? The main building, 1296, it was begun. So it's less than 100 years old. I know, 100 years is a long time, right? But at the time that Ghiberti does this panel, the roof wasn't even on it yet, right? They hadn't even put the dome up, so it was still under construction. And it was commissioned for, not the cathedral itself, but for this building down here, the baptistry, where the ritual of baptism took place. That's just outside the cathedral. So now we're down at street level. As you came out of the cathedral and went to the baptistry, there's a set of doors there. And the caretakers of the cathedral want a new set of doors. And so they sponsor a competition. 7 best artists from all of Italy, mostly from Florence, but from all over Italy, are going to submit a competition piece. But they will judge which one is the best. And that person will get this commission to do the entire set of doors. Okay? So this is to prove his worth, to prove his skill, right, for this competition. So your textbook even refers to this as the competition panel because of the prominence of this particular concept, right? The supervisors of the cathedral were the Guild of Wool Merchants. You know what a guild is? Right? It's kind of like a union, a labor union. It's almost exactly like a labor union, right? To practice any craft in Florence, you had to belong to the guild. They regulated trade. Right? Now, Florence first. Right, would be sort of their thing. If you wanted to work from outside, they would tell you when you could sell your things. The idea was to protect the local trade in Florence for the Florentines, and also to set very, very strict standards of quality. And there were guilds for almost everything, right? Carpenters' guilds, stonemasons' guilds, right? Silk weavers' guilds. The wool merchants' guild was one of the wealthiest of them all. And they had, as a secondary duty, they had control over all work that was done in the cathedral. So they're the ones that sponsor this competition. They give the money for it. And a contemporary source tells us that there were 7 entrants. Of the 7, 2 of the panels survived. Only 2. What we're pretty sure about, there might still be some doubt on this, but most people are pretty sure that the other 5 got melted down. Because this is a very expensive process. Bronze ain't cheap. So they kept the 2 finalists, Lorenzo Ghiberti and Filippo Brunelleschi. Right? Now, I'll get that question and then we'll finish up. Yeah. Yes, as a matter of fact. The American one, I don't have the exact page numbers, right? I can't tell you that. But I'll tell you this. On winning the competition, he did the first set of doors, right? So the baptistry, right, is off A, right? So the cathedral is here. The baptistry sits here. Right? Yeah. And the doors that he's supposed to do are right. Now, there were some other set of doors that went back to John. John did the design. Some of those happened. The idea was there's a door here and one here. Okay? So the old doors were on 1340 or so. They're going to move over here. Here's the system. And the American doors was just moving into 25 years. So, as God said, 25 years, that's what I think. So, 1402 to 1425-ish, right? Working on this new set of doors. As soon as he gets done, the Renaissance has progressed so much, right? The style has changed so much that the new set of doors, which kind of look like these, are kind of out of date now. So, the 1340 doors move over here. The new doors, 1425, here. It's another 25 years. So, yeah, it was a huge thing. Plus, there's the prestige, right? This area between the cathedral and the baptistry was where every major civic session was. So, streets, the fortune, they come up here, go through there, come out the beach, right? This area was so important to the people of Florida that they called it paradise. Right? And their seashore became known as the Keys. So, in addition to the pig, and the Americans are the South, looking at a new variety. He definitely brings up in mind of their people. He just contributes to the life of his beloved city in a way and in a prominence that no one else could. Right? Brunelleschi was lost, but still pissed off about it. He wrote a diary in the 1466. He barely cheated. Right? He barely asked them what they wanted and then gave it to them instead of like playing by the rules. Right? Still missed much later. Even though Brunelleschi became the most prominent architect in town, he's the one who completed the dome on top of the cathedral. Right? So, he had nothing to do with it. But this is a big thing. Huge. Yeah. Brunelleschi also signed the altar or like structure of the altar as well. It could be. If it is, I'm not 100% sure. Have you been before? No. Yeah. It's also like he began his career as a watchmaker, designed all the machines he would need for the cathedral when he was having it, finished. Because the dome sat there for like 100 years. Nobody knew how to put a dome up there because it was too big, right? Now, it was wider across than any dome that ever been put up, and nobody knew how to put something up without using it, right? Let alone how to get all the materials needed up to the top of the cathedral, right? And Brunelleschi came up with not only the technologies for putting it up, but also design for all the machinery. And like he came from a rock in Florida, he did a big one. Right? I mean, he just got problem. We'll look at these two, start here, and then begin to talk more about this new direction that we're seeing there in other works of art on Thursday. Right? Remember that Thursday your bibliographies are due. If you are having trouble, don't wait until Thursday to try to solve them. Come and talk to me, email me, talk to me about how you've been searching. I'll do what I can to help.